Hello everyone. Welcome to Data Science Foundations, an introduction to your data science and AI journey. My name is Sumudhu Tenakon. I'm a data scientist. In this video series, I'm going to talk about generative AI, which become a very fascinating field everybody talking about these days. With the emergence of generative AI tools and applications such as ChatGPT, DAL-E, and some other tools available from various different companies, people talking about it, and everybody wanted to get involved and everybody wanted to try them out. In the previous two videos, I gave a brief introduction to AI and what is the connection between the AI we knew so far and what is the generative AI we got some understanding about it. And in the second video, I gave some examples and I demonstrated some of the capabilities of generative AI. Some of the entertaining examples, some are very useful examples to your daily work. So in this video, which is the part 3 of the series, we are going to discuss some of the applications which can be really useful in your business work as well as your personal work. Let's move forward with that. Before we go to the topic, let's try to refresh our understanding what is generative AI. So we discussed this last two videos as well. So generative AI and AI, we all talk about it. So artificial intelligence or AI, we are trying to mimic the human cognitive capabilities. So we are going to make machines work and think like humans. So we are going to give the capability of our vision, hearing, and speaking. And also now we are going to make our machines generate content like human. Try to understand natural language, try to process natural language, and try to generate natural language. And try to see things and to understand images or visuals and to generate visual output. We also have the robots interacting with the environment like human, doing many mechanical stuff. So we are going to improve that with the improvement of these new AI technologies. So where are we going to fit the generative AI into the traditional picture? So generative AI is part of deep learning. So generative AI made possible with the advancement of deep learning. We talked about some of the technological advancements and breakthroughs such as transformers in the previous video. You may go back and watch it out if you wanted to know more information, or you can read more about what are the technologies behind generative AI in various sources. So let's get the textbook understanding of generative AI. If you wanted to explain it simply, generative AI is a type of AI that is capable of generating text, images, or other media in response to the prompts. So we'll talk about prompts a little bit in this video as well. It is very simple, like you are talking to a human being, another human being, or maybe a dog. You're asking to do something, that's a prompt. So that living being or human or dog or some other pet can respond to you in some form. So you can think of you are trying to interact with a machine which is capable of doing generative AI. You are going to get some work done. It could be generating text, it could be generating images, it could be generating sound. We talked about or we looked at some examples in the previous video. All right, and also we got introduced about AI modalities. So we learned there are different modalities based on the way you train these generative AI models. Some models are trained to produce text output. So they're trained based on using the text data. So they can perform various natural language tasks. Some models are trained on images. So they can perform various tasks related to vision, generating images, understanding images, doing some classification tasks, various things. Filling the gaps of the image. We looked at some examples in the previous video. And some models are trained or specialized on assisting coding. So generating code and understanding the computer code, various different languages it trained upon. You can generate a Python code based on a human description in natural language. We looked at some examples in the previous video as well. This video also I will going to explain some of the things in little detail than the previous one. We also looked at how the music or audio modality. So when a model trained on audio data, it could be speech, it could be music. So those models can generate music or speech or to understand them. And some AI modalities can be video, 3D models, etc. In brief, the capability of this generative AI system is limited by this modality. Some generative AI models can perform more than one modality. So that means some generative AI systems can perform both in text and image domain. We looked at some examples. Given a text prompt in a natural language, we could generate an image. We looked at that example of generating image of space walking panda last time. And you can generate code based on the natural language description. Same can be done with the voice and natural language. We can do with the images and some other modality. So like that, some models are actually can perform within multiple modalities. So we call them multimodal architectures or multimodal generative AI models. This is an example I just mentioned to you, which is a multimodal generative AI model. So which is capable of generating image given human prompt, which is in natural language, in a text prompt. I'm giving a description, and then based on that description, taking that as input to your model, and it will produce a generative output, so which is the image. So we have to provide instructions, which is the prompt, in a way a model can understand and produce the output we want. We will talk about the prompt in little detail in a future video, but in this video I'm going to give you a brief overview. The prompt is one of the most important thing when you are going to interact with the generative AI model or a system powered by generative AI. Without a good prompt, you may not achieve what you need to achieve. Like a human being, if you don't give proper instructions, if you did not explain well what to do, that human being may not understand what you are trying to tell, and maybe if it's something you need to get done from that person, you may not get the task done very well if you did not explain. Same thing applies for these generative AI models. You need to explain it well. So the making your prompt, designing your prompt will be a very important task. It's a skill actually you need to develop over time. With that understanding, now let's look at some different applications of generative AI. First one, natural language processing. So we learn one modality is the text, understanding natural language and processing and generating. So that natural language processing has various tasks. You can have generative AI model employed as a Q&A bot, which is possible of providing question and answering. And also you can do various summarization tasks. If you have a long text, could be a long meeting minutes, or maybe your class notes, you can summarize it. You can use generative AI model to understand and summarize and generate a summary content out of it. You can do various translating from one language to another. It could be a very useful application of generative AI. You can feed one language as input to the generative AI model, and it will translate into a different language. How cool it is. So generative AI can also generate responses to various human conversations. It could be emails, it could be a text message, it could be a simple chat message. Like Q&A bots can be a conversational AI bot, which is providing responses not only with information requested, but human-like responses. You can also use the generative AI response to various human conversations. The next modality is a vision or the image modality. So you can do various computer vision tasks applying generative AI models. You can perform image classification, object detection, which is like identifying objects in an image, semantic segmentation, identifying regions of the image belong to specific objects or specific entities. And also you can do image restoration, which will be a useful application if you have a old photo, so which is already destroyed by weather or some other because of the oldness. So you can restore those images very effectively by applying generative AI models, using generative AI models. So various computer vision tasks, it's not limited to what I have here, you can achieve using generative AI models. You can perform audio related tasks. So which is a very useful example is a speech recognition. It could be a phone conversation, it could be a talk in a conference, or maybe a video call or something you can convert into text. There are various voice transcription applications. You can use generative AI to transcribe human voice into text. You can use generative AI for audio classification and also to generate speech and music both. If you wanted to uh, use the generative AI model for text to speech, it is possible to do that. So we'll discuss some of the examples combining these different modalities, text, audio, and computer vision together to build some applications. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate a high-level idea understanding of these applications, but in a future video, I will demonstrate how we can build those applications in our own using various open source frameworks and pre-trained models available without you training the model or spending a lot of effort on training or fine-tuning. You can use right away and build some cool applications. Very useful applications sometimes for your day-to-day work or maybe at work as well. So we'll discuss. So these are three common modalities, and when we combine multiple modalities, we can achieve like multimodal applications. Means using multimodal generative AI models, we can build applications to work with language, image, and audio, multiple of them together. Okay, when you are understanding this AI or generative AI or any AI, think like human. What would you do in those tasks? So what you are trying to do essentially, so I gave the clue at the very beginning of this video. In AI, what we are trying to do, we are trying to make machines to work like us, to act like us. We are trying to let machine mimic humans. So multimodal tasks can be achieved using multimodal generative AI models. So one such example is image captioning. Assume now you have an image in front of you, which is image of a flower. What would you see? You can understand what it is, you can describe it with this color and maybe type of the flower or the background. So various things you can describe it. If you have a picture of a pet or maybe a dog or cat, you can describe how the dog or cat looks like, the color and the breed or various things, right? So like that, you can have a generative AI model to describe an image given to it as input. You can also use the generative AI models to do like a very useful document processing task, which is document question and answering. What would you do if you have an invoice or maybe like you get a receipt from your store, or like when you go and buy something from the store, you get an invoice or receipt. So you usually read it right before you pay. What would you read? You read amounts, you read like the quantity you purchase, and you see whether bill for the correct item, various things. So think like machine. If you wanted to train a machine to do such tasks, not only reading but to understand and also answering questions. If someone asks you, what did you purchase? What is the amount of the item you purchased? And how many items you purchased? Such questions you can ask from these generative AI models, given an image of invoice. Those are multimodal tasks which involves image, natural language understanding both. There are other tasks such as image generation using text prompt. We looked at it earlier. To generate an image, you need to provide a natural language prompt. You describe what you need, your human creativity, your imagination, you can put into words and give as a prompt to generative AI model. Generative AI model will generate the image given your prompt, not by itself. Remember, you are involved in this process. That's a very useful multimodal task. Involve again image and the natural language. You can also use video classification, which involves audio, vision, and also could be natural language if you wanted to describe a video. That could be very curious mind you should have right now, what things we can do. We could do many things. This generative AI technology, models and the associated tools and other platforms will enable us to do various different tasks we could not do before. Let's try to understand how we can apply generative AI in solving common business problems. or how we can use generative AI in our daily work to help us. Before we going to talk about business problems or generative AI or any technical stuff, let's start thinking about human again, ourselves. Let's remind what we are trying to achieve with this AI or generative AI in general. We are trying to make machines to mimic humans, to work like us, to help us, not necessarily to replace us, but to help us in our work. That's what we are trying to do. So now let's think about human again. When you are doing your daily work, at your workplace or at home, while you are walking or interacting with other human beings, think about few human cognitive functions you are going to use. One such thing could be making decisions. From the time you woke up, you make a lot of decisions without you thinking too much, or without without even you are noticing. You make a lot of decisions: where to put your footstep, what to drink, and when to get up from the bed. Various decisions, right? And when you are walking, so which route you need to take to work, and various things. Even we are not very conscious about what we are doing, but a lot of thinking happen and a lot of decision making can happen at work. Or when we study, we also do a lot of generative tasks. We generate content. Here I am generating content. I put together these slides, and I read some articles, I read some books, I got knowledge from various different sources by watching videos, watching tutorials, taking some courses. So I got some knowledge, and I'm trying to share with you using the content I create. Some people write, some people sing or create music, some people do artwork, they draw or they create art pieces. Those are the generative content human make. So now what we are trying to do is we are trying to make machines to make generate content. So let's try to understand how the generative AI and the machine learning is going to be related. Like I mentioned, so we do a lot of decision making as human. So when we want computers to make decision or to make certain predictions, we use machine learning. So we can do various classification tasks using machine learning algorithms. We can build machine learning models to do classification, regression, clustering, and various tasks. In a machine learning model, a traditional machine learning model, what we are doing is we are predicting, like you see on the screen, an equation y equals fx. You all know what it is. It's a function. So f is a function and x is your variable you are passing into that function, and based on the variable values you will get a value of y. If it is a classification problem, mostly you are predicting a probability of your record or whatever the feature set belongs to a particular class. That is the probability. If it is a regression, you are predicting a value. I will give you some examples. And if you are predicting a clustering, you are trying to predict the group an item belongs to based on its features, which is the value of x. The feature vector of that item will give you the cluster it belongs to. That is what we are doing in a traditional machine learning. So x will become features. Let's try to understand. In this notation, you will see the x could be various features: x1, x2, x3, etc. If you think about an example now, let's take an example of predicting car price based on its features. What are the features here? Could be color, car model, build year, and brand, mileage, door, and various features. I don't want to put everything here, but you can understand what I'm trying to talk here. So based on those features, you can train a machine learning model using some historical data of car prices and their features. The model learn how to predict price. So that is a machine learning model trained for regression problem, to solve regression problem. You can also train models to various classification tasks. In our first video, we looked at like predicting a car. I explained you in very high level. So those are we introduce as supervised machine learning. You're predicting a label given your features and labels to the machine learning algorithm. You're predicting a class if it is a classification problem, a value like this one if it is a regression problem. Clustering, you're predicting a group which that item belongs to based on the similarity of its features. Now let's look at what generative AI is doing and what is the relation, or what are the similarities and what are the differences. In generative AI, we do like a similar task. We can call it as a function, but this function is not predicting the probability of becoming a class, or it's not predicting a value, but the generative AI is predicting the next item of a sequence in a very high level. That's what I can describe we are doing. So think your sequence is x1, x2, x3, x3, like that the sequence goes on. You wanted to predict after xt, the t term in your sequence, you want to predict the t plus 1. Given your sequence, what should come next? We looked at some examples in the previous video with a sentence, right? So now if you want to predict, let's assume we have a sentence. So this sentence says, an apple fell from the blank. So our task is to fill this blank. Let's assume we gave this task to a generative AI model. How it is going to find which word should come to the place of blank? Let's assume this sentence is a part of a bigger paragraph, so there could be some words before it as well, but we will focus on this sentence alone. If we take this sentence into a sequence, so how the sequence is going to be generated from a sentence? So we can consider a word is an item of a sequence. And is the first word, and apple, fell is a word, from is a word, the is a word, and then the blank. So we have 5 different words or 5 items in this sequence. An apple fell from the. Okay, so that is the is the last item of the sequence, and we should predict what should come next. What are we going to predict actually here? So what's the y value? So previously we learned in the regular machine learning, the traditional way, y could be a probability if it is a classification. It could be a predicted value for a regression. It could be a group label for clustering. So in this case, what is y? It should predict a probability of the value coming to the xt plus 1 place. So what value comes to the next? So what is the probability of being that value? So let's understand with this example further. So let's assume we may have choices. We have these 4 words: sky, red, ground, and tree. So we have to choose one. Let's assume your machine learning model, your generative AI model, has choices out of these 4 only. For example, right? So now, how should it pick what is the best suitable word? So again, let's forget about the machine. Let's think about human. As a human, what would you pick out of these 4 words to fill this blank? Would you pick sky, or ground, or red, or tree? What is the more meaningful word to replace? What is the most probable, if I ask is in more technical way, what is the most probable word to be appear in this blank? Is it sky? It's not, right? Ground? Probably not. Red? May not be. It's very least likely. Tree could be. So an apple fell from the tree. Sounds meaningful. Sounds familiar to us, right? So that's a probable word we can think as a human. That is the most probable word out of these 4 can be used to fill this blank. Okay, so as human, we pick the word tree as the next word should come. So what is y now? So y could be the probability of next word being tree. So we could have probability for next word being sky and ground and red. So how the generative AI model can pick, the system can pick what should be the word. So it can pick the word with highest probability. Like that, it can fill the blank and then keep filling it in the sequence forward. The actual way of getting the sequence generation is a little complex, but This is the very high level and a way I can explain to you to have a good understanding of how the generative AI generates the sequence. Okay, I hope this helped you to get a better understanding of how the machine learning model in general make predictions or in the decision making, classification, regression, and clustering, and how it is being related with the generative AI, how the generative AI generate the next item in the sequence using the most probable word or most probable sequence item. All right. I assume this helped you to enhance your understanding on generative AI and machine learning. So now let's look back some applications. The first one, we are going to look at the same application we looked in the previous video, which is email response generation. In this example, someone sent an email or customer sent an email to a merchant, so that merchant supposed to reply to that customer with the order details. So this is an email asking order placement. What the generative AI does, we looked at it in detail in the previous video. So it identified using the prompt. So what we're supposed to do is we have to give a prompt to the generative AI model, which include the instruction and also the content, which is the email we received from the customer with the entire email text. And then we can also provide where to begin the response. So it start with dear. So those three things together, generative AI model could be able to generate the response. So this is the response. What are the things we observed in the previous video? We observed it correctly identified who sent email, which is Maya is the sender and John was the receiver. And when the response has been generated, those two things were identified and applied in correct way. An address Maya and sent by to be sent by John in the generated response. And also it identified certain entities like which is the address correctly identified, and then the account number and correctly identified. Not only identified, they applied into the generated email properly without destroying the message, without any distortions. So it applied as a human reply, human generated reply. You won't see initially you won't see any difference between a human generated response for a similar email versus the machine generated using a generative AI model. But this has one problem we discussed in the previous video as well. It did not identify the company context correct. So the Maya was from XYZ Company LLC. But the generated response is thanking about choosing XYZ Company LLC, which is again the customer email, customer company. So that is not correct, right? So we need to understand these generative AI models are not 100% accurate. We need to have some guardrails, some checkpoints. We will discuss some human in the loop. We need to reconsider, can we really replace human by using generative AI, or we can empower human and make human work better, or to achieve more things, or to solve many complex problems we couldn't solve before. So that's what the power of generative AI we can use for the betterment of humanity. Okay, so this example is the first one. So now let's look at another one. This could be another interesting example we also described in the previous one. It is querying data with generative AI. So we all know if we wanted to query a database, we write SQL or SQL query. Or if we use the other tool, we have like different ways of writing a query. In this generative AI application, what you can do is you can use the code modality, the generative AI model trained using the code modality, which is trained on codes, SQL codes, or maybe some query codes. That model can accept a natural language description of the problem. So that problem can have a description of your data model, what are the tables you are having, what are the column names, and what are the primary keys. You can describe in a way you're describing to another human being without any technical, the programming context. By providing this natural language description, the generative AI models should be able to generate computer code. You can ask like a SQL code, generate me a SQL code. So in this description, I'm providing this actual description I provided to a generative AI model, and I will show you the answer I got as well. So here I'm providing what are the tables I'm having, what are their primary keys, and then at last I'm asking a question or maybe my requirements for the query. So I want to generate a SQL query or SQL query to get count of employees by department name. So that is what I need to achieve. So I got a SQL query. So which is pretty good, right? So it gave me the description even without me giving any programming context or no SQL context, just a human description, natural language. It provided me a SQL query. So now, how this can be useful? Yes, as a human being, typing a query and getting a SQL, typing a natural language description and getting a SQL query could be useful for a person who are learning SQL, person who having like less understanding of it, but you want to achieve things very quickly than writing a code. So you can generate the code and get it done very fast without lot of effort. And if you think about the automating the process, so you can easily automate the process by doing this. Assume now you have people without no understanding of writing a query, but you can let them write the description of what they want to achieve. They're not necessary to know the data model or the description of their tables. That you can append to the prompt before you are sending to the machine learning model. But what you can do is you can get their question or maybe the requirement to get the data in natural language, so which is the last part of the prompt. Highlighted in pink is the requirement of user who is sending the prompt. Generate a SQL query to get count of employees by department name. The other part is the data description. It could be the same thing you are going to attach based on the prompt. You can attach to the based on the user prompt. You can attach to the machine learning model prompt. Okay, so the both will be in natural language, and then you can send the response. I mean, a machine learning model will generate the response, which is the query. So we looked at earlier. What's the next step? So you can take the query. Maybe you don't need the user to copy paste into another system. You can let it run. Maybe user don't need to see the query. The user can run this query on your database and get the results. It could be a plot. It could, I mean, you can have like another program running to generate a plot out of the result, or maybe another generative AI prompt you can use to generate a Python or another programming code to consume this result set from the query, and then generate a data visualization or a simple report, or maybe just output a table. So that task can be achieved starting from a human prompt using natural language without a single code or single SQL understanding. Okay, so this is one of the very powerful application you can apply generative AI. And then the other application we can use for like software development about commenting program code. So now assume you have a program code. So this is a simple Python function. I didn't highlight any syntax because you are just going to send the text into the machine learning model, the generative AI model. So like you have in the green font. So you are sending the text, the Python code in as a text form. But you are going to give some instruction, or you're going to describe what you need to achieve. So what you need is add docstring comment to the following Python function. So that is what we need to achieve. This is again, like this is actual example. I ran through a generative AI model and then I got the answer. I will show you the answer in a minute. Answer natural language prompt. Given the description of the task and the code together, two things, and then it should give you the output, which is the response from your model, which is the code with the proper comment, the docstring. We all know in Python, if you learn Python, you know what is docstring. So you describe your function with the parameters and return values and some description. This generates like a reasonably good docstring with what we need to achieve, right? So this is another useful application of generative AI with the code modality and the language modality or the text modality. Code plus natural language, you can achieve a very useful task. All right, so let's look at another example. So in this example, we all know what is the chatbot, or we all have a chat application we use at least one time. So we can build a chatbot using a language model is behind the scene. So that language model can respond to user questions given in the chat prompt. So this will be your prompt. A user can type anything here, and then that prompt can be taken into natural language as a natural language prompt. Like the SQL query example we looked at earlier, it could be something to get data from another source. Some data retrieval process can happen. I will describe that in detail with the chatbot. We can integrate prompt plus some data retrieval and then achieve certain task with an application demonstration. But in this high level example, assume you gave a prompt to retrieve some data from a different source, and you did some tasks to retrieve the data, and then together you are going to send it to the machine learning model, and then the machine learning model, the generative AI model, is supposed to generate an answer, a human-like answer to you or the person who is going to use the chatbot, and that answer will be displayed on the in the interface. The answer is generated from the language model. So this, in a very high level, a conversational chatbot can work for a simple to complex task. It could be simply having a conversation based on the model training. It could be a model trained data plus some additional data you have. Okay, so this is one very useful application to solve some problem you have. So let's look at another example. So in this example, so let's think about a conversational chatbot with voice. Previously we looked at a chatbot with text, so you can type and get the answer. But this time we are going to speak to the chatbot. It's not the type. So say we don't have a typewriter, we have a microphone in front of us. We are providing audio, which is our spoken words. In this application, we wanted to employ 3 different machine learning models or generative AI models. One could be where we can transcribe the voice to text. Given the voice as input, output will be the text. So that's the first model, which convert your audio. The second model, which should convert your text into the answer. So you're going to send that converted text into language model, and then your model will understand your question and generate answer for you, and then that answer is in text form. It will be sent to the third model, which is text to voice. It could be a generative model as well, trained on text and voice. That model should be able to translate your text into voice, and then that will be an audio signal will be received to you as a spoken response. You send audio, internally it converted to text, language model understood it and generated the answer for you, and that answer is translated back to voice using this third model, and then the output will be received to you as voice. This is a conversational chatbot with a voice interaction with the user. User don't need to know anything inside the dashed line region, but user can interact with audio as interacting with another human being. So this is a very useful application of generative AI. Let's look at another application. This is also a very useful and very important application for communication. So we use translators most of the time. If you don't know a language of other person is speaking, you need to have a translator. It could be a person, it could be a device, it could be a software tool. You have to have some form of translation. So using some combination of generative AI models, or maybe you can have like one model to do this thing, you should be able to achieve translation very easily. So what is the workflow? like the previous example, the person on the left side is speaking in a different language. So that voice from a different language will be sent to the first model. So which first model to understand the voice, or to take the voice as input and transcribe it to text. So that is the first step. The second step would be send that transcribed text to the language model. The language model is capable of translating, taking the input text from a different language and convert or translate into a different language. So that is what language model does here on the center of the screen. And the next step, that the translated language or translated text will be sent to the model text to voice. So that model is supposed to take text as input and to generate voice or sound as the output, audio. Then the audio output will be sent to the second user, the user on the right side, which is expecting a translated spoken sentence or the translated conversation you can have. Okay, so that this can go in the other way as well. The person on the right side can also speak to a microphone, send to the voice to text model. Same way it can translate. So these models can translate, some models can translate multiple languages. So the other language can also translate to the language on the left, the person who is speaking the language on the left side. So that translation can happen. And at the end, the person on the left side can receive the audio translation in the language that person can understand. Here, we are using generative AI models. Again, this could be like one model trained to do multimodal tasks, or we can employ multiple models can do single task like language model and voice to text and text to voice. Those are a number of models. This is a very useful application. Now we have some good understanding of various applications. I introduced you some basic applications, but some common ones. Maybe later we can discuss more on them. Like I said earlier, I'm planning to have some demonstrations with some open source tools available. We will build some, and then you can also build your own applications. So now let's look at some of the other applications in very high level. Let's go through them quickly. Multimedia applications as well. And there are many more. So if we talk about document processing, we talked about it, information extraction from documents, from the filled forms, or maybe it could be from emails, it could be some meeting minutes, or it could be some your notes from your class notes, or could be some contracts, could be some various long form documents you find out in your daily life, right? So you can use them to extract certain information, some useful information like a human read. Again, I'm repeating myself. Every time when you talk about AI, think about what human does in this scenario. If you're reading a long contract with maybe for a leasing, you're trying to lease apartment, you get a contract, or maybe with maybe 10-20 pages long. So you're reading it, you need to understand certain things, right? Terms and conditions. You can employ a generative AI to understand what is important as human read, right? So that model should be able to. And also, if you are trying to understand a form, or maybe an invoice, or maybe a certain document with a format, or maybe a free format document, you can train a generative AI or use pre-trained model to extract certain values, or say certain fields and key phrases. You can use the generative AI to extract tables from documents. Some documents contain tables. We need to extract them and use it in our applications. So that could be a very useful task in business applications. You can use generative AI for classification tasks, summarizing large text, very similar to that example I said, the contract or the legal document you can think of. So you can summarize and get the understanding of what it is going to say. And you can use language translation. We looked at it. We can use for the customer support. We can use generative AI for Q&A bots, conversational AI, and we can also do the automate the response generation we looked at earlier, like the email, text messages, or chat messages. you can generate automated response. And we can use generative AI for various speech processing tasks. Speech to text, we looked at it. Extract information from a transcribed speech recording, like if it is a telephone conversation, like we looked at earlier, real-time transcription can happen, and also it can be sent to a language model to extract, like the document processing example. We can extract information and take various actions real time. And also we can use generative AI for generating speech from text. We can also apply generative AI to do the document querying. We discussed about it, and we can also do the data querying from the databases, and we can generate reports. We can decide which visualization is the best. We can let generative AI to decide what is the best data visualization for the given data set, and ask some data summaries, so various tasks. And also the transform data into a different form. If your data is in a paragraph, you can have generative AI model to understand the key elements and put into a table. Like you're asking a human to do this task, you can have a generative AI model do that task for you. We can use the software development. In software development, we can use generative AI for code generation. We looked at it, and the commenting, and I did not show you the example, but you can use for error checking. So these things, again, like I will highlight in the late part of the video. All of these examples, you need to be very cautious. You cannot think like generative AI is 100%. No human is 100%, not the generative AI as well. It can make mistakes. It can give you a factually incorrect answers. It can give you the answers which are not what you expect. So you need to have some guardrails in your application, but it will do a good job. Like we already saw that examples, and we also saw some problems with the example, the email generation problem. But you can use them to do the error checking in your code. The other thing we can do with generative AI is in multimedia, which is you can let it describing image, like image captioning, generating images, generating videos, generating 3D models, various tasks. A lot of entertaining tasks. And you can, I forgot to mention, you can also generate music and sound. Okay, those are very useful multimedia applications. People think about this multimedia applications will make human creativity go down, but I don't think so. The person who is very, very good in writing, he or she can make their writing better, more creative, get more ideas with interacting with generative AI. Person who is having very clever thoughts, or maybe very creative ideas, but doesn't know how to draw, or maybe like everybody know how to draw, but doesn't know how to draw very well, right? So not everybody can draw nice images. So their thoughts or their ideas, their creativity can put into words that everybody can do, and then the generative AI can help us to make creations or to generate images or videos or 3D models out of the human creativity. So therefore, the multimedia industry can be thrived, or multimedia industry can be benefited. The people who are working in the industry can make their work much better than we are doing now if they use generative AI tools and technology in a good way. All right, so now we talked about applications. We talk about some usefulness of generative AI. So now let's talk about how we are going to put generative AI into work. So when we are thinking about a business, or maybe your daily life, so you wanted to make some value out of it, right? You're not going to use generative AI just because you're getting entertained with it. You will use it for a while, but if not, if after some time, it's no use if you're not making any value to you. So we need to think about the business value and impact around that. So generative AI is not working alone. I mentioned to you, I explained, and in very briefly, the data is the base of everything. Data is the key ingredient of AI, machine learning, and all the data analytics products. So you need to have a strong data governance in your organization. if you wanted to put generative AI to work. So that is a must. The other things associated with it, you need to have like organizational mindset. So people need to be ready to use generative AI or AI in general. People need to be educated. People need to be made aware of the technology and how to use it for a better to make their work better, right? So doubts need to be cleared. So another thing is when you are applying generative AI, you need to make sure you're putting human in the loop, or you need to think about people, the impact on people, and also how we can make the generative AI work with people, not just to replace, not just to take over certain tasks, but to work with people and to empower and increase the productivity and the creativity, efficiency, all the good things around the business. Human in the loop, again, will be very useful to have a control over generative AI, not to make mistakes. And we need to think about the technology, what to use and how to use generative AI. So we will discuss a little bit more in a short while. We need to think about processes and how we can automate things. What are the things we can automate with generative AI? What are the processes we are having in the organization, how they can be benefited using generative AI? Some processes may not be automated. So some processes may not be able to apply generative AI effectively. We need to understand, then we need to approach with a good strategy. Then the generative AI come to the picture. So we have a lot of things around it, protecting the business value or the impact. And another important thing we should not forget, security and compliance. There are a lot of concerns. Generative AI, yes, they're very useful and very powerful tool, but they have some issues associated with it. We need to have a good control of it to uphold the security and compliance. Because without it, your entire thing you build around your business values or your business will not be useful. You will have a negative impact, not a positive impact. You have to think all of these things. There could be more aspects to make the best out of the technology in your business. All right. So, like we discussed, what are the values generative AI can bring to you? It can enhance customer engagement. We know now, like you can also imagine with the capability of generative AI what it can do. So it can definitely enhance customer engagement. It can provide tailored experience to your users of your applications or to your customers. It can automate complex tasks we could not do before. It can improve your knowledge base. So like we already explored how the code generation, the querying with the generative AI, and we all explored ChatGPT and Google Bard and some other tools available, like the Bing powered by ChatGPT. You can do a lot of queries and you can get answers to it. And you can learn from generative AI, learn with generative AI using as a tool, not as a source. You can increase your productivity and efficiency. Definitely, if you use generative AI applications in your workflow, you can get your human work more efficient, be more productive, and with automation, things can go in a very positive direction if you use it responsibly and carefully. If you take it very seriously in your organization, you could get like a lot of positive values out of it, and many more values it can bring. All right, so now we talk about generative AI. You have some understanding of what are the values it can bring and how to start with it. So to start with anything or any technology or any tool or if any new thing in your organization or in your life, you need to think about the balance. So where to start? That's an obvious question everybody will have. So there are a few concerns. I'm not going to go into a very detailed discussion, but I will show you some concerns. So one of the things you need to think, like, there are many different tools out there. The technology is there, the concept is there, people with expertise is out there. What you should be doing, you should be building in your own, or you should be buying something already built. There are various things available. And how we can, even if you buy or build, how we can apply it, how we can use the technology, whether you use the cloud AI services or you want to have on-premise, or you have to have your own servers running with the generative AI to do various tasks, or whether you use the cloud. And also, if you wanted to have like a system, are you going to build upon open source frameworks using open source pre-trained model, open source frameworks and pre-trained models, or you use cloud AI services, or some packages you can buy and install in your infrastructure. You can think of like whether you are going to use pre-trained models or you are taking the model and customizing it. Some pre-trained models are ready to use, but again, things need to be carefully examined and tested before you use the out-of-the-box models. Many models you can customize. You don't need to retrain from scratch. Retraining will be very costly. It will take a lot of cost and a lot of computational resources to train model from scratch. But if you want to retrain or fine-tune the model for your task, it will be a possible or the potential thing for a moderate computing resources with moderate computing resources. You can do that. The build from scratch is a very careful decision someone need to take. Considering the computational cost, considering the expertise you need to bring in, the cost of the expertise could be high. Cost of data, because generative AI model built from scratch need lots of data. If you read about the OpenAI models, Google and their talks, I would highly encourage you to read them. You can understand how big is the data volume they had as the training data, and how much computational resources they used, and think about the money and think about the resources you have. The building from scratch may not be applicable for many organizations in that case. Okay, so if you think about generative AI, bringing it and building something out of it, foundation models are the ones, are models trained to do some general tasks. You can take foundation models and adapt to your use case. The language model like GPT-3, GPT-4 is a foundation model. So that can be used to perform various language tasks. Okay, so these are the language models like BERT, GPT-3. There's a model called Bloom, BARD, Codex is a model for the code related work you can use. Vision models are Clip, Align, and the multimodal models are GPT-4. So GPT-4 is a multimodal model, so which can also work with images, text, and code as well. And DAL-E is an image model, image and text. You can generate images based on the text prompt. Those are the foundation models. You can use them. You can use them for various different applications. Some models can be fine-tuned. Some models can be used right away. So if you take a foundation model, like you see on the screen right now, you can do some fine-tuning. Again, that could be optional. And then you can apply to your application. You can apply the same foundation model, a language model, to do text generation, could be used as a Q&A bot, could be used for information extraction, could be used for text classification, sentiment analysis, or translation. So there are many more language related tasks. I don't want to describe everything here. You can do that. The fine-tuning piece. If you want to do fine-tune for your own data or to your own domain, you probably need to have some data, right? So you can have some labeled and unlabeled data both and use them to fine-tune model. So this could be like some task you require some expertise on language models or those pre-trained models, neural networks, and some expertise you require. But if you do that, if you have the data, you should be able to fine-tune the model with a minimal effort, and then you can apply to your use cases more efficiently than you are using the the foundation model as it is. All right, so now you have some understanding of how we can get started when you are learning or when you're applying to your use case. Okay, like I said earlier, foundation model can directly be applied without training. You don't need to do the fine-tuning, that is optional. you can apply, and for the learning purpose, in our exercises we are going to do in the future videos, we will apply some foundation models or some pre-trained models directly to these applications. Okay, so now let's think about the pipeline. If you take a foundation model or the pre-trained model as a starting point for your generative AI application, so your model will be sitting on the center of your pipeline. So the first thing will be the task receiver. So which I call the task receiver is the one who is receiving the prompt. Okay, so we looked at the prompt receiver in the previous applications. And then you have to have a pre-processing task to your pipeline. So the prompt may need to be pre-processed, and also the prompt need to be retrieve some of the data elements based on the prompt task provided in the prompt. There could be some data retrieval involved, and then the combined prompt can be sent to the model for the inference or the prediction. The next piece of the pipeline will be the post-processing. The model will predict something, or the inference, or the generating the output in this case. So this is a general model machine learning model pipeline. So in this generative model, we'll generate the output. We are not going to send that directly to the user. We will do some post-processing. I will describe that in a minute. We have to do some validation. We may need to do some guardrails, apply some regulations to make sure we are not sending wrong information out there, right? Just because it generated from the generative AI model. And finally, we will send the output back to the user. It could be another user interface which is going to send the output. So now we have understanding of how these generative AI models work in applications. Now let's try to understand what are the limitations of it. In the previous slide, I already mentioned to you, we have to use generative AI models with some guardrails, rules, and some regulations. There are a lot of reasons to that. To understand that, we need to understand what are the limitations. So let's look at some of them. The bias can be a key thing, because you are going to train this generative AI model on a training data set. We all know the machine learning model learn from data. If you provide wrong data, or if you provide incomplete data, or if you provide some data with some issues, your model learn from it like a kid. A kid learn, if you teach a kid with wrong information for a while, the kid will learn wrong things. Machine learning model does the same. Bias can be a thing, it can induce based on the training process, on the training sample or the training strategy. Then also these generative AI models, not limited to language, can have like a difficulty in tuning for new applications. Yes, it is possible to tune, but it's not straightforward in many situations. You have to have data, you have to understand how to train them, tune the model. Some steps you need to follow. You need some expertise. It's not straightforward, at least in the level we are right now. The quality of generated content is a limitation. In many situations we have this issue. Yes, it is generating a very good quality. Actually, the image on this slide is generated from an image generation model. So which I gave just a prompt about a robot. I gave a human thought. If I remember correct, I gave like a humanoid robot reading a book or sitting on a bench, something like that. So based on that, it generated this image. But even here, like you will see some issues. So you see the leg, the robot's right leg is discontinued. So there are some quality issues in the generative content, and we need to think of that. So the other things could be the explainability. So explainability and interpretability is a concern, because if you wanted to explain why this image is generated in this way, not in the other way, or if you are generating an email, you probably need to explain why these words are here. Some explainability and interpretability will be difficult with these generative AI models, at least with the knowledge we have. And the other thing will be high computational resources and large data demand. Like I said earlier, we need to have like a lot of data to train the model. Even for fine tuning or retraining, you need to have some data available. You can do with small amount of data as well, but for this training from scratch, we'll need a lot of data and computational resources. And there's another issue is copyright claim issues, because generative AI consume data from various sources. The people who have copyright claims on those sources have no way to track them to the generated content. Sometimes someone else's poem is being used in the training process, may contribute to a generated content, but we have no way to give the proper attributes to the original author. We may not even find that person's work is associated with the generated content. There's no way to trace it. So the copyright claim issues are there. Okay, so let's look at like some of the details of things. The quality of generated content. The one key issue is a hallucination. So we probably heard the word associated with generative AI. So the generative AI models can made up answers without without any context, without being trained on the thing. It can generate an answer, even that answer cannot find in the training sample. So hallucination is a big problem. There are ways we can overcome hallucination problem in the generative AI by using better prompt design and following some training with care. So we can do that, but that's a non-problem with the generative AI models. And like I said earlier, it can provide factually incorrect information with high confidence. So I have one video before I tested like few months back, I think a couple of months back, I tested Google Bard and OpenAI ChatGPT with Bing, all three together. So there are some incidents happen with some of these platforms, or some of the models gave factually incorrect answer but with high confidence. So this can happen. Like human, they are not perfect. So let's talk about explainability a little bit. The explainability, like I mentioned, it is very difficult for us to trace the source. So this is related to copyright claim issues as well. We don't know, in most situations, we don't know what made this answer, which source we can link this answer to. In a certain level, like there are some solutions, like if you go to some generative AI applications, you will find out, okay, the answer is generated using the sources from these web links. They will provide like a Bing. If you could do a Bing search powered by ChatGPT, it will provide you some links. But we cannot guarantee the answer is generated from those links only. There could be some other sources. So it is very difficult for us to know how the prediction or the generation is made. Okay, so these are some general problems associated with AI and machine learning, but it is special and high in generative AI because this technology is new, and we are trying, as a human or human professionals, we are trying to understand it better and better. So over the time, these problems can go away, but still we need to be aware of these issues. Okay, so we now have understanding of the issues. What are the dangers of generative AI? So people talking about it a lot. Some people are very skeptical. Some people are feared about it. Some people, I believe, some people are unnecessary fear of it. Some people are fear of it because of the human nature, not because of the technology. If you take this generative AI, which is a very powerful tool for someone who is with a bad intention to do many bad things, the tool, generative AI as a tool itself can be harmful without a strong guardrails. This is why I'm highlighting again and again, the control need to be there. The human need to be there to have some supervision. Some checkpoints need to be there. The generative AI have ability to generate complex type of malware. We know now it can generate code. It can generate various different content. Trying to send emails impersonating other person. Someone like you. It can generate voice, someone like voice, and generate audio, visuals, videos. Can generate fake videos. You all seen the deep fake videos, right? And that they can harm people. There could be a lot of things can be done if the technology is in the hand of a bad person. There could be a lot of harms. Like again, the technology is not itself harmful, but whoever is controlling it, whoever is using, can be very harmful. It can, like we discussed about with the issues, it can generate some content unfair or discriminatory results. That is again based on the training and the bias on the training data. But this could be some danger that could trigger some unsettling situation in the community based on the generated content. Who to be responsible for it, right? So AI is responsible for the generated content, but the consequences, someone need to take the responsibility. So therefore, we need to be careful on that one. The other item is manipulate. The generative AI can be used to manipulate a community with a systematically generated misinformation. We all know it can generate a very thoughtful statements. Someone can use the generative AI to generate maybe Twitter statements, or maybe like you can send some social media post or email send out like human does, right? So with a human touch, sometimes when you go to the community with in a very large scale generated content, it could be blog post generated by AI. When you have like lots and lots of these generated content with a certain intention, with the targeted intention, you may divert the thought process of a community into a different direction systematically. So that can happen. That could be a one danger. People are afraid of the generative AI and suggesting to have some control and some thoughts on it. And there's also a danger in the data privacy concerns. There could be a lot of security and data privacy issues associated with generative AI. So we need to think of it. Yes, the technology is there. It's a tool. It can be used for various good uses, and also can be used for bad things. Should we stop using it because of the bad things? No, we don't need to do that. We can do that. We can make a good use of it. So we have to have some precautions. We have to take some steps. How we can if we think of generative AI as a beast, or maybe something can go out of control, so we should have a way to tame it, or we should have a way to use it for our best, right? So what are the things we can do? We can ensure that the training data is accurate and diverse. So we can think very carefully about the training data being used to train the model. We can have like a very thoughtful training process, not to have like less bias on the certain data we feed in, based on the data we feed in. And we can use more advanced generative AI models and algorithms. We can keep up to date, right, with the technology. We can fine-tune the model's hyperparameters and architecture based on the problem domain. So we can tune models based on the problem domain. A model trained for healthcare application may not be applicable for a legal application. We can fine-tune the model, and we can train specialized models for various applications. And we can use the hyperparameters to have the control. We can always, I'm repeating again, we can always think humans should be in the loop while learning and using. So in that way, we have control over it. We can always monitor. We can trigger. We can understand when it is going out of control and take action. A good prompt design, prompt validation, and prompt engineering is a must. When we are using generative AI in an organization, or we are using as a consumer, you should think about your prompt, what you ask from the generative AI. From the application side, we can have some validation and some engineering on the prompt. When the user send a prompt, we need to have some some work to do before we are sending this to the model. So that control will make the better use of the generative AI tools. And most importantly, to have everything, so we have to work on as a professionals, as academics, and as like the general public, administrative people. So we need to come together and improve AI ethics, policies, and regulations. We may have some outdated rules and regulations, policies. We may need to update them according to that, stay up to date with the technology. That is a must. Otherwise, we may have some issues in the future. To use the technology to the best use, we need to think about them, and we should not worry about the technology if we can use it in a responsible manner and with a lot of thoughts on it. Okay, so these are some of the research articles. If you are interested in knowing more about generative AI, there are lots and lots of articles out there, some blog posts and videos and tutorials. You can find it out, but these are some important research articles. When I get time, I will go some of the important one. The very first one I got introduced to in the previous video, which is attention is all you need, which is the breakthrough of transformer architecture. That is a paper about the transformer architecture, which made the breakthrough for the development we have seen in the last few years. Okay, so that is a very important paper and interesting paper. If you get time, you should read it. The other papers also, we have like a lot of development, lot of key developments happened during last few years, and there will be good reads, and I will have like more articles in the description. There could be a lot of blog posts. I don't want to list everything here or in the description, but you can find it out like and read more about generative AI. It is very important for you and for everyone, for me as well, to stay up to date, because this technology is developing day by day in a very rapid phase. It's emerging out, so you need to understand it, we need to learn it, and we need to understand the issues as well as the usefulness of it, and we should use it. And learning is a very important thing as human. We are going to generate our knowledge based on the knowledge we gather, like machines does. All right, so in the next video, we are going to discuss how we can build some generative AI applications using Hugging Face AI community resources. I'll get you introduced to the Hugging Face AI community resources. So it is, you can think of like a platform which you can download and use open source framework from Hugging Face, as well as you can download pre-trained model from various entities for a Q&A task, to voice recognition, to summarization, and to document understanding. Lot of models available in Hugging Face, which is for free, and open source framework is also available, and also some data if you really want to train your own model. So we'll look into that in the next video, and we'll try out some of the examples we looked at in this video. We'll try to implement them and do some practice with it. All right, see you all in the next video then.